Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Reinertz, the Community Development Director with Art South Dakota. We're just really excited to have you all join us today for this session with Allyson Morgan from Prints and Repeat Fine Arts Printing in Sioux Falls with some tips and tricks for taking photos of your artwork. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names filing into the attendee list, and so really happy to see you all here with us today. Before we get started, I just need to quick say thank you to some of our partners and sponsors and funders who really make this work possible. Amongst them, the South Dakota Arts Council, the Bush Foundation, as well as the National Endowment for the Arts. As we get into the sessions today, please do send your questions in. We do ask that you use the Q&A button is a part of Zoom. Just helps us to keep track of all the questions, and I'll bring those to Allyson when we have some time for Q&A. But also, please feel free to use the chat function to send messages to each other, to send messages to the panelists, and to say hello to your colleagues here with you today. I'd also like to point to a couple of other upcoming artist-focused webinars that we have. The first is next month, April 6th. We have someone joining us from the South Dakota Department of Revenue to discuss sales tax requirements for artists and performers. As many of you know, there are a lot of interesting sales tax intricacies, whether you're selling your artwork or whether you're a paid musician or an educator. And so we're really excited to have Lori join us from the Department of Revenue to talk through some of those issues and questions. And then we're also incredibly excited to collaborate with Claudia Dale and the whole team at the Watering Can. And we'll be broadcasting one of their monthly artist speaker series statewide. So they've been doing these in person at Rayfeld's here in Sioux Falls. But we're really excited on Tuesday, May 16th to have Jim Mathis, who will be presenting some social media tips, tricks, and hints for artists, promoting their work and their projects. So before I turn it over to Allyson, I wanted to have my colleague Jim Spears jump on and say hello to everyone. So how's it going, Jimmy?
Good, thank you, Andrew. It's good to see you all, or not see you, I guess, but know you're out there. I always find these webinars a little different than the normal Zoom meetings because we can't see everyone who's participating, but we know you're there. I'm Jim Spears, Executive Director of Art South Dakota, and I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for your attention and your advocacy over the last couple of weeks as it related to our state legislature and House Bill 1116. I'm guessing many of you were following along for that wild ride. And I just want to say, that we realize that at times not everyone agrees with our position. We even heard some folks this last issue that disagreed maybe with our position, but I think the important thing is that we are informed, and that is our role. I think most importantly, in terms of advocacy, we want the arts community to be informed, to be knowledgeable about issues and policy that may affect your work. Those issues that are coming up in peer. So that is our role, and we appreciate your interaction with that work. One of our pillars of service is advocating on behalf of the arts sector. We do spend quite a bit of time in peer, and as well as DC. And we communicate often with our state legislators, our federal legislators. And we do that on behalf of all of you. So if you're not connected with us, if you're not receiving our emails, you're not getting our advocacy updates, make sure you sign up for our email list. We want everyone informed. We think knowledge is key to in being an active citizen and an active arts citizen. Maybe I should say that more clearly. So please make sure you're getting our alerts. And if you have any colleagues that are not on our list, we encourage you to share our email alerts or our sign up page with them as well. And I won't go into any of the specifics of last week in the House Bill 1116, but if this is new to you or you want to learn more about Art South Dakota's advocacy work, there's a section on our website. You can go to artssouth.dakota.org, and there's down at the bottom, there's several pages related to advocacy. So I'd encourage you to spend some time checking out those pages and learning how you can get involved in that work. So thank you. And with that, I'm going to keep this short because we're not here to listen to me. I'm going to turn it over to Allyson Morgan of Prints and Repeat Fine Arts Printing. Thank you for being with us today. We're looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you, Andrew, for having me. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys about this. I think one thing that I do get a lot of questions from artists about taking photos of their work, and stuff like that. So I think this has been a really good opportunity to be able to tell people the knowledge I have instead of little bits to everyone I meet. Here's all of it. So so let me see if I can get my screen shared, because I do have a presentation for you guys to get started with. So all right. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Hopefully, are you guys able to see the whole screen there? Okay.
Looks great.
And I realize when I have it full screen, I can no longer see my notes. So I'm gonna get those pulled up on my phone real quick. So what the main feature of the webinar is essentially how to take photos of your artwork. Two different reasons why people need to take photos is going to be for submitting to, proposals to galleries, to all sorts of things like that, as well as taking a really good high quality photo to get it printed. Now, I do have a process to get it scanned and everything like that, but it's tough. I've noticed some people have a lot of pieces and they want to have that done, but that's a lot of money to, just to get all of your pieces done. So good opportunity to take photos of yourself is, being able to not have to pay for that process. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to go over is lighting. Lighting is a huge part of it. It can make or break a photo. I added the one on the side of this photo here to kind of show an example, because I took this photo with my phone. You can kind of see a little bit of brightness coming in from the right side. That way you can kind of see this directional lighting coming in. It kind of overexposes the image. So it's very crucial to get this right. Now, a lot of people think that you need really bright lighting to get a really good photo, but oddly enough, it's actually cloudy weather tends to get the best picture. I kind of call it like nature's photo umbrella, because the clouds are essentially blocking the sun. So you're getting kind of some diffuse lighting that way. You don't have to buy a bunch of photography equipment. Therefore, still saving money that way. So yeah, bright lighting is what tends to wash out your images. Anything that has texture and is light just turns white, and you kind of lose that texture, and you're really not wanting to lose that because that's the whole part of your image. The other thing that can easily, make an image look not as good as it should is if you have some shadows. This could be your arm, your phone, anything that is in the way, basically blocking from the light to the image. So as long as you're able to get things out of the way, you look at the piece that's in front of you and look out for shadows, because you don't want something that's drastically darker on one side and lighter on the other side, because then you end up getting a distorted image. Another thing that people may not think about is warm lighting. So I actually switched the light bulbs in my place to bright white bulbs. You end up getting a very color correct image that way, because most people have warm lighting. It feels better, it's nicer, but it's yellow. It causes a yellow hue to go over your image, so therefore kind of changing the look. And when you spent a lot of time getting it to look how it should, and you have these yellow, essentially yellow bulbs, you know, they're the ones kind of messing with your image there. So one thing I also mentioned a little bit before is balancing the lighting. I have an example later on to show you, but you can kind of tell when there's like it's darker on one side or lighter on the other, and it just looks off. It may not look bad, but it just looks a little off, and you're, you know, trying to avoid that. So those are the couple of things that, at least for lighting wise, that people should definitely look out for. So the next step after getting your lighting taken care of is setting everything up. Let's get started here. Should go here. So setting it up. So sometimes what I get for images for printing is people kind of like lean it against something, and then you take a picture straight on. So you end up having this kind of warped image. Something that I'd suggest to people is making sure that you're taking the image straight on. It's, you know, some of these things are going to sound kind of common sense, but I do get a lot of images that are, you know, at a weird angle. And then, you know, I have the capability to straighten everything out and fix it in Photoshop, but not everyone has the, you know, Adobe suite to be able to take care of those things. So making sure that you're straight on and kind of watching the sides of the camera viewpoint, making sure it just perfectly lines up with the image. So one way to get a straight on image is by actually laying the piece flat on the ground. You're going to be able to make sure that you're watching out for shadows this way, because most of the time you have, you know, if you have overhead lighting or anything like that, or anything coming in from different directions, just watch out for shadows this way. But just laying the piece flat on the ground and then making sure you have a solid background. I like things like foam board, having a piece of foam board around to make sure you have a nice clean white background. I know a lot of people are asking about submitting photos to things, and a really good way to make sure that your piece looks great is not taking it on like a dirty carpet or, you know, a table that has like food on it or something, obviously, but an easy way to just kind of solve that problem. I like having foam board around like a big piece to just do that, or even just a white blanket just to have that nice white solid background. Another way to get your piece flat is actually just hanging it straight on the wall. It's going to be easier to go straight on and take a picture that way. Now you're going to need to worry about directional lighting again that way, because you have different like lamps and stuff going around. Just making sure that wherever you put it, you know, have some balanced lighting there. So the other thing I'd noticed that people do when they send me photos for stuff is they take it from really far away. Go in as close as you possibly can without cropping any of that image off. It's going to look the best for submitting things because you're not going to have all these distractions around. And also the closer you get, the better quality you get, because the further away, the blurrier it's going to get. So, you know, if you have an easel, I've seen people take easel outside and they put their piece up there, and then they're standing 10 feet away from the piece. And then there's all this white, you know, space around it. Just walk as close as you possibly can to get to that piece, and that's going to get you that best quality image. All right. The other thing that you should probably make sure of is, if you have very steady hands, that's totally fine. I know my hands just kind of naturally just shake. That's just is what it is. But using somewhat of a tripod or just propping your phone up just so you'll take the photo, because even when you click the button is still a tiny movement and it can change that photo completely. All right. I have two of these and I don't know why. Okay. Next one here is avoiding glare. Now that is kind of something to do with, you know, directional lighting and having that overexpose the image. But what people, I've gotten some questions about is, do I put varnish on before I take the photo, or do I put varnish on before I bring it to you to get a scan from it or something like that? And I I say do whatever you got to do, you know, because I think I'm not super familiar with varnish, but as far as I know, it's just a coating. It protects it, or gives it a shine. But I'm able to kind of use Photoshop and work with that if anything does get affected. But I would say take a photo before you put that on if you're doing it yourself, because if you don't have the capability of being able to, photo manipulate it to get that glare out. One thing that someone did ask me is, what do I do if my piece is in a frame? Take it out of the frame. You're going to get that glare of a glass. You're going to get your reflection in the glass. If you're able to easily pop it out of the frame, sometimes they have those little turny things, you can just pop it easily out of the frame, and that's fine. But most of the time what people are asking this for is because it has that paper backing. It's completely sealed in. I've had plenty of pieces that people say just fine, take it off, because I send them to Ray Feltz afterwards. Here's the paper, here's the piece, and then they just reassemble it. And just putting the paper back on, I don't think there's going to be much of a cost to that, but it's worth it if you're going to get a much better image out of it. So my answer would be, I think someone asking that would take it out of the frame. And then also taking the photo before adding varnish, so that way you kind of avoid that glare that you get. All right, the other way to kind of avoid a glare, someone was asking, the other people were asking for like submitting a piece, or even taking a photo of like a 3D piece, like a sculpture or something like that. I really like foam board for that purpose, because it's really lightweight. It doesn't cost very much, as long as you can find it. You could even find it online, some really like thin pieces, and just create a box where you basically create your own lighting box, protecting yourself from, different directional lighting. It gives you a nice background. It gives you a nice flat space on the bottom. That's a solid background, as well as solid floor, I guess you would call it, and also protects you from that directional lighting. And it's not going to cost as much. That depends what you can find. If you can find a photo box, but they could be over $100 for something like that. But as long as you find some foam board pieces. And my idea was, you can just use like packaging tape to kind of put it together, if you have a way to store it. But I know if you buy Velcro pieces, the hook and the loop, and you just cut little pieces, and then you can just kind of disassemble it after you're done, and then just kind of put it back together. That way you can at least store it when you're not using it. So, because I know otherwise I have a small office. I know what that's like to do that kind of stuff. So one thing that people were asking me about was cameras. Now, I'm actually not very familiar with cameras myself. I have a different process. I have a scanning process. So what I've kind of want to talk to people about is just using your phone. They've come a long way. They actually do a really good job, as long as you kind of follow the steps. Couple things I want to talk to you about phones, though, is clean your lens. It sounds like I said earlier, it's going to be one of those things that sound like common sense, but it can drastically change the look of the image if you just use a nice clean, lint-free cloth or something, like eyeglass cloth or something to clean it. Big difference. So definitely worth your time, just to clean that off. Don't use zoom. Ideally don't use zoom. If you are standing as close as you can, just don't stand far away and use zoom, because that's going to completely alter the image with that digital phone's capability of like trying to manipulate the photo. Just stand as close as you can, just don't use zoom. Now I was trying to think of I just want to make sure that people use the back camera instead of the front, because the back camera of the phone is going to be higher quality than the front. I don't know too many people are going to turn it around to use the front facing camera anyways, but just wanted to make sure it was said. Just the specs on phones, the specifications on those, they're just higher quality on the back. So it's just better to use those. Now this may be people may not agree with me, but I've done a lot of research on this. A lot of people are very big fans of iPhone, and I've had an iPhone 90% of my smartphone owning days. But my husband had an Android, and I was like, no way, there's no way, no way, no way. And it gave me the opportunity to use both of them the exact same way, the exact same picture, same distance, absolutely everything. Pull them open in Photoshop. Android was better. It was weird, and I didn't want to admit it, but I now have an Android phone because it was just, I took it over and over and over again, pictures over and over and over again. Now my comparison was between an Android 22s Ultra and the iPhone 12. So those were my comparisons that I used. But yeah, and it can vary. Maybe the next, whatever the word is, the next version of the iPhone is going to be better. Who knows? But right now, that's just a little bit of information that I saw. So one thing that I noticed a lot of in the comments were, how do I submit my photos to things, or like, what's the best photo I can take? Because it's a huge part of marketing yourself. It's posting it on social media, it's submitting it to a gallery, or for a proposal for a grant. Taking a good picture of your work is huge. So, you know, if you take a really far away photo in your bedroom with your dirty laundry, it's going to look a whole lot different than, you know, a nice clean image. Definitely worth your time, you know, putting the effort into that. So a couple things that I like to see when I'm, you know, looking online and looking at stuff on Instagram or something is when they have a piece and they have a plant next to it and they have a coffee cup next to it, and or just something similar to the piece that kind of creates that mood. You know, you kind of have it leaned up against the wall and just with a couple of other things just to kind of create a mood, because it helps people visualize what it's going to look like in their own place, because people need that little bridge to kind of connect them from seeing the piece and then visualizing it in their own space. So one thing someone was asking, another thing someone was asking was, I have a wood piece. How do people like really visualize it? You know, since it's better in person, how do people really visualize it? My answer to that is taking really close-up pictures. I'm just going to go back to the one before. This one, I think, has impact to it because you can see the texture, you can see the details. It has that impact to it. So taking up a really good close-up picture of the detail, and I'm going too fast. Okay. But yes, so taking a really close-up shot of it, it helps with really nice lighting, like that cloudy day, getting it next to a window, getting some light shining on it, really is allows you to get that really close-up detail. And I did that with that picture there. I did that with a phone. So there's no reason for you to spend hundreds of dollars on a camera for stuff like that, because people are doing that with a phone, and yeah, don't need to waste your money on that. So something that definitely I want to go over for people, it's all about the high quality image. It's not only just taking photos of your work, really good quality photos, but what you do with it afterwards can make a difference. I get all different types of photos, all the images all the time, and making sure that the file type is right. And it's something that can be really overwhelming if you're not a graphic designer or not. I mean, a lot of us, you know, certain age, you kind of just get pretty used to technology, but it's not, it's a lot of information. So one thing that I have to ask people is making sure that I get an email of a file and not through social media. And I've done this just to make sure and test. I've sent a file through an email, and the exact same file, I sent it through social media, through a Facebook Messenger, whatever, and those messenger things will compress it. And most likely, I'm guessing just to, save on storage space that they're all working on. And there's no need for it to be a huge image through there anyways. So it drastically reduced the file size, the quality, everything. So if you have the capability of emailing it, I know there's limitations for sizes on email, but it will keep that file quality better and not lose out on, I just sent it through social media, through Facebook, and then that, image that you worked so hard to get, suddenly it's reduced to this little, 1x3, and it doesn't look very good. So if the file is too big to email, I always suggest uploading it to a cloud server like Dropbox or Google Drive. I have a little screen here to show people how to do that if you want to screenshot it or whatever, because some people, when I say upload it to Google Drive, 90% of the time I've had people seem really overwhelmed with this thought. And I've done it a bazillion times, so it's really easy for me, but it's essentially downloading the app, and then there's a little plus sign when you open it, bottom right, and that way you can create a folder. And I think, in my opinion, if you're submitting artwork to anywhere, it might look a lot better too if you name the folder, artwork for Art South Dakota or something like that. You name it, so that way everything is titled, it's organized. I think that might give you, another step up than, I sent it through Facebook. Just another little professional way to do things. So I just created a little test just to be able to show that. So created a folder and uploading the files, and then these screenshots I took on my phone and then kind of simulated uploading them into the folder. So the first file you do have to hold for it to select, and then the next ones you can kind of tap on, and then the upper right. And then once you hit select, it'll start uploading. Then it's the little top, little three buttons on the top right on the far image there. Once you tap on that, then you have the option to copy the link and then send it, email it to, or even Facebook message at that point, send it to whoever you're sending it to. Just make sure the share portion right there, you are giving them access that way, adding their email address. That way, otherwise, if they do click on the link and they don't have access, it'll just send you an email, and then you just have to say yes, access kind of thing. But that way, kind of cutting out all the hassle steps or whatever for the person, just to be able to, a nice folder with all of your stuff in it. It's a nice professional, organized way to send people your stuff. All right, so here's another thing that I want people to just see. If you don't really have an option to change the file type, that's, best you can do is best you can do. That's totally fine. But I have people that, even do digital creation stuff, and they're trying to get stuff printed. So best file type. So because I work in Photoshop, I always just say, send me a Photoshop file if you're working in that. So I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by this. Most of the time, I just say JPEG is a universal file image or image type. Everyone can see it. Most everyone's going to have some kind of photo viewer. So if you have only the capability of taking a JPEG image, that's totally fine. I think with iPhones, there's an option, now that I think of it, there's a settings that says it's HEIC. I think some iPhone people, when you take a picture, I can't remember the setting, but it'll have a file format HEIC, and you just have to go into and change the setting to universal or most compatible or something like that, and then it'll turn all your photos into a JPEG. Because otherwise, I don't think, with Photoshop, I can open those HEIC images and convert them, but I don't know if it just, another little step just to make sure that everything looks cohesive when you're sending it over. So, and I know when people sometimes are saving stuff, TIFF file is going to be larger than a PNG, but those two comparable, very similar quality. So if you don't want to do the Google Drive to like upload the large file and you only just want to email it, the PNG file tends to work just fine for that. All right, so I have a couple of examples. I told you earlier that I had a photo that I took with my phone, and part of it is good, and part of it, I just kind of took it quickly just to show an example. So this is the photo that I took with my phone of the painting that is right about there. I put it by my window and I took a picture. Now on the left side of this piece, it looks pretty good. You can kind of see the texture of the canvas. You can see the detail, brush strokes, whatever. But the right side, it looks a little off. That's that directional lighting. That's the sunlight coming through. You end up losing a lot of quality on the right side. I just wanted to show the difference between like taking a kind of off photo with your phone, and then I did a scan of this. So in comparison, this is a nice image that you'd be shooting for, kind of thing, to be able to get. But when you're taking a photo and you have some bad directional lighting, you end up getting something like this. So you want it to look cleaner, more balanced. As long as you kind of avoid that directional lighting, it'll still work. So this is what happens. This is a zoom in of that like bright light. So even though it's like, oh no, I really want to use bright lighting, all those white spots are now just white. They're blown out. They don't look right. So this is what you'd be shooting for to get that quality. This is a scan that I did just of the same painting. So definitely lose a lot of image when you just get too much bright lighting coming through. So one thing to definitely avoid. So this is the left side of the piece. This is a big zoomed in version. So it's kind of like sending your image, something that you've taken with your phone. When you see this off the bat, that right side isn't my favorite, but seeing the left side, it looks fine. It looks good. You'd be able to send this to people. You could submit it for printing. You could do all that kind of stuff as long as you avoid the right side of the piece, that lighting or whatever. But that, when it's printed out, same size especially, it doesn't do too great with enlarging, but sending it same size to get printed or sending it to someone to look at for submitting for a grant, as long as you're just getting that balanced lighting and making sure that you're really close to the piece and everything, because I was right as close as I could. That's gonna still look really good, and that's gonna get you where you need to go with that. So that was the difference I did between that one and that one was the scan. So I have an example on the right there of someone who sent me a photo that was really far away. And I just kind of have an example of like my scan type of image you'd be shooting for. That's the one on the left. And then the difference between, the one you'd see on the right. And I even want to show, if people can see me real little there, I have an example of these printed out. Now, they look pretty much the same. It's not until you look really close at it, but it's when you see, yeah, that's the scan, but that's a phone photo. So you can actually get away with doing that and save yourself the time, the money from buying an expensive camera that you probably are going to take a while to figure out, but utilizing just your phone, as long as you're close to it, because this one was really far away, so it really lost a lot of quality. So getting that great image helps you. It's marketing, selling, making money, getting you places, getting you in shows. That's huge difference. I do just want to add that if you do decide, if you get into this and you've gone through the webinar, you've paused it, you've screenshot it, you're like, I swear I'm doing everything right. I am still here if you need any help. I have my information on the screen. This is actually a picture I took close up of a scan. I did a scan of a painting, and that's actually a print. So the texture you can kind of see through there, that's actually flat print. So as long as you kind of follow all the steps, you can get that texture in there and get that impact, and without having to sell your original and be done with that, and not have that opportunity, and then have that impact of sending it to a gallery and people being able to see the texture that you put your effort into. So that is all that I have. I'm sure there are questions. Hopefully I went over everything. I am available for messaging too if you have anything that you think of later on. Hopefully I went over everything, but thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate it, and I enjoy being able to kind of go on and on about all the stuff that I like to do. So hopefully everyone gains something from that.
Well, thank you so much, Allison. This has been really great, and it was really nice to see. Like you said, that one the one example, that left side was totally usable. So it's really nice to know. I mean, of course, whether it's going to you for the really high quality scans, or whether it's the
Right.
folks that really get into using DSLRs or mirrorless cameras and getting higher quality photos, it's really good to see that there's a lot of good you can do just with your phone, and not having to get other software going, or other hardware going. Speaking of software, just had a question come in, which is what triggered that. But one question came in, which is, do you know of any user-friendly or affordable software for photo editing outside of Photoshop that you use?
I just use Photoshop. It's what I'm familiar with on that side of things. But for editing photos, if you have a computer, I know it's a matter of just Googling. I know there's like just free Photoshop software kind of thing. And someone even sent me something just to do really simple things. I think it was even like a web-based program, something that was really simple. Most of the time you can just Google it, and it's free photo editing software. There's stuff like apps for phones. Let's say I even think I have, I don't think I have it here, but sometimes even apps on your phone just gives you the capability of like cropping it and changing the lighting. Because sometimes I used to pull it open in Instagram and then like mess with this stuff and then save it or whatever. But I know there's a lot of stuff out there. I feel bad just saying Google it, but there's so much stuff out there. As long as you just look at the ratings on stuff or just look at reviews, there's quite a bit out there that's really user friendly, pretty easy to use. And if you don't, most of the time, even I run into Photoshop, how do I do this lighting effect in Photoshop? And there's an entire list of videos on how to do it. So just a matter of figuring out the right way to look it up online. There's lots of options.
And there's some great options in the chat that some people have been dropping into of things they've used. Canva online, Picasa 3. A couple people use the Camera Plus app on phone. The software called GIMP is a open source Photoshop alternative. I know also I've used the Affinity software packages. Those are still a fee, but they're a one-time purchase and not a subscription like Photoshop. So those
Right.
are some other options. While we're in the software questions, there was one question that came in when you were using Photoshop. Do you do any of the autocorrect editing, or do you do everything manually?
Autocorrect always gets too carried away. So I mean, if it's Instagram and it's an auto enhance, click, fine. But I definitely use manual stuff. It's just the difference between, there's ease of use and there's a little bit of like knowledge. Like I know all the settings to be able to go in and do what I got to do. So no, I don't usually ever use auto, because it'll do it. Like Photoshop, it'll like, no, I don't need it that bright, or because my goal is trying to get it to look like the painting when I'm editing it. But for social media stuff, I just use auto enhance on like pictures and stuff. Sometimes I don't really want to use auto enhance, and like if I have a painting that I'm next to a print and I'm showing people the example like side by side, I don't like to use that kind of stuff, because I don't want people to think that the painting looks different than it actually is, because it'll oversaturate it or make it too dark or too light or something, and I want people to see exactly how it looks. And sometimes like auto enhance will do that. instead of just kind of like, oh, it's a little too dark and actually I need to brighten it up so people can see it. So there's little adjustments that way, but yeah, good question.
Great. Then, kind of jumping back a couple of questions from the lighting side of things.
Mhm.
One was just, do you have any preferred either brand, color, temperature, wattage for bulbs that you've used specifically around when you're trying to get some good lighting for these kinds of photos?
Oh, sure. It's just regular bulbs from Ace Hardware. As long as you just see, I don't know what it says specifically, but one will say warm light and one will say, I think it's daylight, I want to say, but like daylight, and then it's a bright white, and that's what I have like up there kind of thing. But yeah, just regular standard, whatever the lamp takes. Um, and then actually sometimes I like balancing out a little bit, so I'll have some like, I don't know if you can see it over there, but I'll have some yellow bulbs in different ones and then the white up there, so it kind of balances out sometimes, and that helps. But yeah, just regular bulbs. It just needs to say like daylight or whatever the word is, but yeah.
Um, Speaking of that, when you're dealing with natural light, when you're dealing with, like you were showing on that one example, dealing with the directional light kind of coming through, do you have any tips for that? I mean, do you try to then get an overhead light, lay it flat? If you are dealing with natural light coming in a window, do you prefer, and I may have missed this, but do you prefer having it turned as directly towards the window as possible while avoiding shadows to get light straight on? Any tips there?
Yeah, so I basically have my big window like right about there, and half of the piece was behind, there's like a curtain, half of the piece was hidden by the curtain, the other piece, had the window there. So ultimately just having your blinds closed or whatever will kind of stop that light from coming in. But yeah, not putting anything directly at it, because that's where you're going to lose all those little details when I think it's like just yeah, too bright. Yeah.
Another thing I've seen some people do, which this may be a terrible idea, so tell me if it is. But if they've had some issues where they really can't get one side of something, especially if there isn't as much texture to begin with, is I've even seen just people use a second piece of white foam core as a little bounce card. So you can kind of just like hold it and angle it. And I'm always amazed sometimes how much that will then kind of even the light out across a piece, especially if it's one that's like stuck on a wall, you can't get it off. There's nothing you're going to do to move it around.
I saw that it was a photographer that had a video where he showed just, and that's not something I've done a whole lot, because with my scanner, I don't really have to worry too much with lighting, but yeah, they had the white piece in the front with the lighting bouncing off of it, and it was just like, yeah, that looked so much better. So yeah, big fan of foam board. Yeah, even just hanging a blanket in front of the light, that's what I did one time just to block it out. Yeah.
A couple more questions left here. One is, generally speaking, with your experience doing the prints, when you've received photos that someone's taken from a phone, what's kind of the largest size typically you feel comfortable printing? This person said they were once told 8x10 is about as large as you want to do from a phone photo, but is that what you found?
So I usually say that you can double the size and be okay. So if someone said, it's hard to know what technically the dimensions are going to be when you take the picture with the phone. But one thing I did forget to mention is I will always look at the image and let you know what it's going to look like first. I'm not going to just go, sorry, too bad, so sad, I printed it out, it's your fault. I'm just going to say, I have my phone out and I take a screenshot of like, hey, this is going to be the quality it's going to look like. Do you want to take a look at a print sample of it first? So I usually say double. So if you take a picture and, physically the image dimension wise is an 8x10, well, let's go to 16x20, see how it looks. But I will always check it first, do anything in my power to see if I can fix it or adjust it, tweak it a little bit. Sometimes I can kind of do a little little tricks to get it to look better. Usually I just say double. is about the max, and anything beyond that, you're gonna start to not like it.
Great. And then just, I think this is probably covered mostly with the lighting side, but do you have any other recommendations for trying to keep the colors accurate for reproducing and printing the work? Is it just kind of trying to get that as natural daylight of a color light as possible, or any other tricks you have?
Yeah, so let me go back to this piece here. And if you can see it behind me up there, I did not do any color correction with this piece. This is exactly what it is. I didn't even do any sharpening, nothing. So it actually came out almost exactly like it. And that, yeah, the warm lighting, the yellow light will definitely mess with it, but using the bright white bulbs is what's going to get you that nice color correct image. Pretty close. So, and if you ever want, I've had people, if they go, hey, I took this picture with my phone, it's pretty close, I have no idea what I'm doing with color correcting, but then they just took a quick picture of their phone or something like that of the piece itself, or you have something online you'd like it to look at, like I can always make a few tweaks, too, but most of the time, as long as you use the bright white bulbs, then you're good.
Great. Well, it looks like we've hit all the questions that have come in, which is really fantastic. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who joins today, and for everyone, your great questions, your time, and especially just for helping to keep South Dakota creative and for doing the work you're doing. It's being involved in the arts is difficult at the best of times, and the last few years haven't necessarily been the best of times. And so we're just really appreciative for all the work that all of you are doing, and also just so grateful to Allyson for sharing her time and her experience and her thoughts today. We will be sending out a link to the recording of this if you want to go back and kind of look back through anything or take some additional notes. And please reach out to any of us at Art South Dakota if we can be of any help to you in your work, or if you have any other ideas for webinar sessions that would be helpful to you. So thank you again so much, Allyson, and thank you all for attending today.
Thank you so much for having me.